What do you
I don't.
think that person, if they're that overweight, what do you think their higher power is now? Was that food became a higher power, money or success? And this is what I was referring to, that when we have this God consciousness in, we our higher power would be nature, breathing air and looking at things and enjoying life. We could have spiritual bread, and then these things become less important. But when we are into the addiction, food, money, success, we become very finite and narrow, and we can't get out because we're into that self-centered fear, and they're trying to get out. What we need is a design for living. When we look at that food, we look at it differently. The corporations are the ones, people weren't that overweight years ago. It's these advertisements on TV. We've been brainwashed. Just like we were brainwashed to think in this society we had to be successful. We look for the pleasure, what's called the low-hanging fruit all the time. We heard the share before. We made a decision. Some people made a decision that food was going to be the answer. Yeah, that's probably true in a way. I just know when I do a diet, it never worked. I need that perception change. It works for a year, 2 years. They do have that show on TV, the 600-pounder, where everybody gets the stomach surgery, and they say right in the beginning, 95% of it fails. 95% of diets fail. When we have a change in design for living, when we look at things differently in life, whether it's with food or people, that's the spiritual awakening, spiritual change. I get it through these steps, and I see other people get it too in relation to our addiction. I mean, yeah, I have to agree with you that things can be more complex than what I'm saying here, but I know, and like in that guy in the lecture, he said, my life turned around. I know when I do these steps, it's the answer to all my problems. It really does. And the thing is, during the day, when I get back into a problem, I go back, like it talks about step 10. What do? We get back into the grace of God. When I'm upset or when I'm into my addictions, it has to do with Bob being the problem. My ego is involved. Okay, is everybody listening to these shares? They're amazing, really good. And also, if somebody comes on and has a little bit different opinion, I think that's great too. That's what it's all about. We love it. Look, you don't have to take my word for it. You're sitting there, and we know 95% of the diets we've gone on, the 99% of the times we try, it didn't work. $9 billion industry, billion-dollar industry telling you, they send you little morsels of food. It's bad enough we're eating all of this poison and all the foods, and it's high caloric foods with all the things that they have scientists and psychologists figuring out the dopamine, to release the dopamine in the brain, right? They're doing all of these things, and here it doesn't work. And the 5% of people who do work on diets are miserable. There is only one solution, because it's related to everything else, resentments towards people. How many of you here have had resentments for 10, 20, 30 years towards somebody? I'm telling you right now, right at this meeting, when you read some of this big book, and it's all in here, the resentments, how to get rid of them. Having that God consciousness, when you have that higher power, why do you think in a lot of religions people fast? Because they realize that food is a material thing, taking them out of self. It's materialism, like everything around us. Go out and enjoy the world, but realize it's a thing of the senses. In this book on page 85, it talks about the sixth sense. The five senses are about the food. When we become more spiritually minded, when our perception changes. Look, I was on these diets. I was on the gray sheet diet for a year, but that day came, and I was miserable every day for a year. Now I'm happy and joyous when I eat something from God's earth. It's invigorating. This is the way people eat, not the poisons look. Would you, on a street corner, if you had a crack pusher, a heroin pusher, a drug pusher, would you go there and start listening to them and taking their drugs? No, but we do it. Look, even for our kids, it's amazing on the TV, the internet, you drive down the highway. They should be, look what cigarette smoking was and what the Surgeon General finally decided in the early 60s. The medical profession would come on TV and advertise cigarette smoking. Today, it is 10 times worse. They're showing, I just watching the other day, these cereals and all of this poison in there. 50 ingredients. Go pick up something in a supermarket that has 50 ingredients. 49 of them are poison. You need the perception designed for living. Those shows tell us, and 95% of diets fail. The other 5% are miserable. I don't want to be miserable. We say in AA, when a guy comes in, he doesn't want to work this program and work these steps, we say, you might as well go back out and drink, because you're going to be a dry drunk, right? We don't want to be dry. We can't. It doesn't work, especially with the food. There is a difference. The food is more addictive, because people I know in these programs addicted to heroin, cocaine, and I've worked with them. They say this food stuff is really, really bad. But the glorious and amazing thing about it is this, that it can bring us closer to these steps, closer to our spirituality. Why do you think those famous religious people fasted, right? They knew, and people in religions, in Far Eastern, Western religions, it's a material thing. But we take it to the ultimate. We gluttony. You ever hear of gluttony, one of the 7 deadly sins? How about pride, anger, jealousy? It's all interrelated. When we let go, we let God in. Our body's God's temple. This is the answer is in these steps, in this grace of God. And I always say, you can have it right here at the meeting. Right now, if you realize the clarity in the water, right? Think of this. Do you want that gloopy 1,200 calorie stuff with all that poison in it? God's fresh water. Change your perception. Because if you're going to sit there, it's self-will. Diets are the worst thing in the world, because diets is self-will. If I could just not eat this food, if I could restrict this, if I could restrict that. I'm not to say you shouldn't have some type of diet plan, but when it comes from God and you have that understanding that you don't want all these chemical synthetic things, it talks about, in Doc's opinion, synthetic knowledge. Well, these are synthetic chemicals. But anyway, if a better morals and philosophy of life that has to do with diets could help us, we would recover long ago. We can't think through this. Beyond all understanding. That's why the topic was beyond all this understanding. Resentments towards food, towards our addiction, towards life. Bill had that spiritual awakening. He said a joy and a happiness, and amazing when we come from the inside, the source, the real source. Bill had that spiritual experience. We don't have to wait 10, 20 years. They say 5 years to get your marbles, 10 years to learn how to use them. That's nonsense. You could have it right here, right now. When your perception changes, you don't make it about you anymore and the ego. The ego drive you wrong every time. Just don't think, right? Have that God consciousness, which was in there. The source is in there. The joy and happiness is here, not up here in the outside world. That's momentary pleasure like the food. But if you want real spiritual enlightenment and joy and blissfulness, work these steps.